Hello everyone and welcome to the studio. It's time for week 3 of our paint along for this month, and what we're going to do is add our pastel layers, and I'm going to try to have some restraint in not finishing the painting. So when I get to the point where I'm just starting to fiddle around and I'm not really concentrating on the marks that I'm making, I'm going to stop. And that's the best time when you realize, I'm not sure what I'm doing, or I'm not sure what to do next. It's always a good time to stop and step away. And that way we can come back next week with fresh eyes to finish our painting. Now, what I want to concentrate on in this painting is to think about edges. We've been talking a lot about edges, hard, soft, lost and found, and how we can manipulate the edges, or how we create those divisions of shapes from the transition really between one shape and another. Sometimes it's hard, we call attention to that area. When it's soft or fuzzy, we don't pay attention to that area. So I want to pay attention to my edges. The other thing that I want to think about is how to create a feeling of depth, believable feeling of depth. Now you may think, well, we're painting something that's up close and personal, and so why do we need depth? Well, we still need depth to a certain extent. Even when you're painting, say, a still life or an animal portrait or something that's up close and personal like what we're doing today, you still want to feel like it has 3 dimensions, that perhaps you could reach around it, right? Now, in the case of today, we're painting a cactus plant. I don't think I want to reach into that cactus plant, but you get the idea. Even on an up-close, intimate landscape like we're going to be doing, we still want to create a feeling of depth, and I'll talk about that as I paint. Alright, I'm excited to get started, so come on closer to the easel and we'll get going. Alright, before we get started, just a reminder of the pastels I'll be using. I'm also going to be using the same set for several of the other demos this month. That's something that I like to do, so it doesn't feel like I'm wasting my time picking out a palette. I'll use it for multiple paintings. So just as a reminder, these are what we're going to be using. It is a mixture of Mount Vision. Some of these fat ones are Mount Vision pastels, some Terry Ludwig's, maybe here's a Diane Townsend, and some of them, they get so small it's hard to know what they are. This is definitely a Sennelier because it's super soft. This one probably as well. So I'm pointing this out because it doesn't really matter what brand you use. Like, you may not have the exact same brands as I have, but what you want to do is find the right color and value, or something close, if you're trying to paint along with me. So don't worry if, oh, I don't have Mount Vision. It's okay. You can find a dark green and a dark blue in whatever set you are happen to have. I'll be making use of my bamboo skewer, and then I found this tool. It's by Catalyst. It's meant for acrylic and oil painting to create texture, and I thought, let's see what happens if we use it for pastel. So I'm going to try to remember to make use of that today. Alright, here we are. This is our underpainting that has now dried, and if you recall, we used the Richardson underpainting blocks, which are really just soft pastel in a square flat form. The blue was just a regular soft pastel. We did an alcohol wash that, if you recall, was mixed with, or I did a water wash that was mixed with oil or whatever it was with alcohol. It was a combination, not on purpose, but we did get some really interesting effects from that combination. But now I'm ready to start layering the pastel. And now I can also start to look at my reference photo, although I'm going to have to take out my artistic license because a lot of this big pad of cactus right there is in the shadows. If you could move the light back just a little bit, it's creating a glare. I rarely use glossy photos. This just happens to be one of my photos that from a trip that I printed, got printed, so it's glossy, and that does make it a little bit harder to see. But I do know I'm going to have to add a little bit more color than that dark shape that I see there. But I'm going to start off by reinforcing the dark area, and that is right in this area right here. Now, looks like I left room for a flower right there, which is not in my reference photo, but I kind of like it. So let's go with that. A lot of times that happens, and I've kind of created a different reality than is in my photo.
Just because the photo doesn't look good.
Right, I'm getting to that. Michael's giving his commentary, which is great. It means he's listening. I love it. You're listening to when I'm talking. That's fun. So what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, it's different than what's in the photo, but not in a bad way. And I'm going to give myself permission to create a different reality and just use the photo as just a jumping off point. So I do notice that there's a little bit of dark underneath each flower. So I'm adding that little bit of dark in there. And I'm going to create another cactus pad right in this area. So instead of one big one, I'm going to have two smaller ones, and then maybe another one over on the right hand side. So that's one layer of dark, and I'm going to go ahead and add another layer of dark, because if I can layer my darks to get more interest in the dark areas, that just adds to the interest and the complexity of the painting. I'm using a very light touch because I really do want the underpainting to peek through. Now, I see that this was supposed to be the larger cactus. Oh, this is the larger flower, and there's actually two in the photo, and I'm not sure how I'm going to go with that. I might just make it one flower. Let's continue on with the darks. Let's now go to the local color. The local color is the color that we see it as, and that is green. So I'm going to start off with a darker blue-green. Oh, I was trying to say before that I'm attempting to leave some of this underpainting peeking through so that we can make use of the colors in the underpainting. Now, remember I said something about needing to create a believable feeling of depth? Well, these flowers are behind this section, right? So this is in the distance. So a couple of things. I want to create this to look like it's further back. How can we do that? Well, colors typically get lighter, cooler, duller, and less distinct, less detail. So I'm using a grayed down green in this area. I also see that there's another cactus pad in the distance that's kind of, I didn't actually make room for it, but I kind of like it. And so I'm going to use that same cool, dull, grayed green and just put in that shape right in there. Now, those cactus pads in the distance are catching some of the sunlight, and so I want to give it a feeling of sunlight, but I don't want it to jump forward. So I'm using a lighter yellowy green, duller in color, lighter. And same here, it's catching a little bit of sun on the edges. And I'm not using my brightest, warmest, most yellow green in this area because I want to have these feel like they're further back. I'm actually going to use an even bluer, like almost a really nice blue-green for this area. Moving forward, though, we are, this one is still a grayed down green, so it's kind of a good choice for these distant cactus pads. But moving forward, I want to increase the warmth, I guess you could say, of the greens, still keeping it dark. And in the shadows, ooh, that little piece got away from me. In the shadows, I'm still keeping it kind of on the cooler, bluer side. So these darker areas in the shadows, I'm using a still cooler blue-green. But as I come into the sunlight, I'm going to add a bit of a warmer green. So these cactus pads that are in the sunlit area and right on the upper edge of this guy here. So I'm making a rounded mark so that I could show off some of the show off the shape, and only on the top where it's kind of coming out to the sun, right? All right, so where are we? So let's look at the contrast here. We're trying to create depth. This is a warmer yellow-green. This is a warm yellow-green, but a duller, lighter version. So this comes forward, this slips back. I can actually pull this forward even more by increasing the warmth of this yellow-green, and actually can push it even a little bit further by going even warmer with my yellow-green. And I don't know that I normally would take these cactus pads so far so quickly, but I really did want to illustrate this for you for this particular demo. So look at how now these are really coming forward, and that is getting pushed back even more. All right, so let's move on. We've got a start to our cactus. I'm gonna take advantage of this tool for just a second and see what happens if I drag this tool through. I don't know how well this is going to show up, but I'm dragging it through these cactus pads, and it's creating just a slight texture. Now this texture is very regular, right? So it doesn't look natural, but I think once I come back over it, having some of those little linear marks peeking through might be kind of interesting. So what I want to do now is give a coat of pastel to our flower shapes. Let's start with the reddish ones, and always when I'm painting flowers, I look at the flower and say, okay, what is the lightest, or darkest, sorry, what is the darkest color I see within this flower? I'm going to make this flower a little bit taller than this guy because we have almost little twin shapes, right? They were pretty much the same shape and size. This guy is also one of the pinkish red flowers. So this is a flower. I'm going to keep that one. I'm going to keep that one dark. When they're in the shadows, they're going to stay dark. But I'm starting with the darkest color that I think I see, knowing that I can always pump it up a little bit more, lighten it, make it more intense. But I'm going to start with it a little bit darker. And I realize I didn't add any green to this area right in here. So that's the first layer for the pinkish peachy flowers. Now let's do a layer to our yellow flowers. Again, I gotta look and see what is the darkest color I see. I see kind of a reddish brown, really just at the base. I think I am going to make just one yellow flower. This guy was supposed to be yellow. That's okay. We can adjust that. Where else? This guy's yellow. And there's a little touch of this in the red flower as well. All right, so now I have, let's do another layer to these flowers here. I'm going to start to make petal strokes. So what I'm doing is I'm using the side of the pastel, and I'm pressing fairly hard. So kind of a cross between a whisper and a shout. I still want some of the underpainting purples to peek through, but I also want to get a nice simple shape to my flowers. So one thing about flowers, I think I'm going to change my mind and make this yellow. I wasn't sure, but always give yourself options. We have all these yellow here. I think we need to just add a touch of it in there. Now look what happened. This is really cool. That mark went over the scratch marks from the Catalyst tool, and I've got some of that peeking through. So that's going to give us some interesting texture. Oh, right in this area. It's kind of hard to see, but we'll be able to work at it. I'm adding a kind of a grayed down purple to some of the yellow flowers just to bring some of the purple in. It's going to help us with our yellow. All right, let's see where we're at right now. We have kind of a layer over everything. I'm using kind of big, bold strokes to paint these cactus for this particular painting. I was about to say before, and I got distracted. Notice I haven't drawn in the flowers in great detail because if I do that, I find myself wanting to color them in, and I want to paint them with big, bold strokes. So if this is supposed to be yellow. If I spend too much time on a drawing of the flowers, it becomes too precious, and I really don't give myself permission to play with them as much. All right, so what is left? We haven't added any pastel to our sky or the area that's behind these cactus right in here. So this is actually the desert floor in this area, and I want to push it back, right? I don't want it to be jumping forward, so I need to find a way to push it into the background, and I can use duller colors. I have to think, well, what color is that desert floor? It's kind of on the peachy side, right? So let's take some dark salmon color here. And as it gets a little bit higher up, I'm going to use a lighter value. And where it's going to meet the sky, I don't want there to be a line. So, in other words, I don't want sky, hard line, hard edge, and then desert grass. I really want it to feel like a natural connection. So I'm going to use softer edges. Now, before I go any further, let's go ahead and put in the sky. Now, remember when that's not the right color. When I put in the sky in the underpainting, I was really excited because I liked the color. In the photo, it's more of a cool blue, but then when I added this blue, I really liked the effect of this warm, light turquoise color. And so when that happens, if you are doing an underpainting and there's something happens and you put down a color for your underpainting and you really like the way it looks, the thing that I do when I'm painting with pastel layers, is I'll go in and try to either use the same pastel that I use for the underpainting, in this case that's what I'm doing, or I'll go in and I'll try to match the color with pastel, the sky color, as closely as I can to the underpainting. And then I'm using a very light touch so that I'm creating, it's now officially pastel because I have 80% or more coverage with pastel. But I haven't changed the color because I like the underpainting color. Just to liven it up a little bit, I'm picking a cooler blue of the same value and then lightly scumbling it over that first layer. Again, just to add a little bit of interest to the sky. This one's too dark. If you can match the color and value, here's a pale yellow. Add a little pale yellow just to give it a kind of a sunny glow. But it's the same value as the blue, so it just kind of mixes together and optically blends, our eye optically blends those colors together, so it just gives the sky a little bit more luminosity. Alright, so where are we at? We've got our main shapes blocked in, we've got our dirt back here, our desert, we've done our sky. Now it's just simply time to go in and add clarity and detail where we want it to be. Now I'm going to focus on this area here because this is the main, this is our star. This is where I'm going to put the, when I say most clarity, that's where I'm going to put the most contrast, the harder edges, the most detail. So I'm coming in with a lighter yellow. I am looking at the photo to give me an idea of how these petals are, but I'm not I'm not worried about copying them exactly. I don't want to completely cover up all of the darker layers of yellow. So I have to be mindful. When I press hard, like I just did there, I get a really nice hard edge. Where I just let it trail off, that becomes a soft edge. We don't look at that petal, but we do look at that petal. Where do I want another hard edge? Probably on this petal. So I'm going to press hard, so I get a harder edge. Oops, it's a little bit, what else do we see in there? Just a little bit of a lemony yellow just to add a little interest. I like the little bits of browns and pinks and purples peeking through. So again, I'm trying to be mindful of not covering it all up. Could be a little bit darker down here. I had that kind of red, brownish, but I think I needed more yellow in it. I have to be thinking about how it connects to the cactus right in that area. Looks to me as though I need to move my little desert area over. Oh, that might have been where there was a pink flower. I'm getting a little bit lost, but that's okay. I know sometimes when we're painting and then we realize, oh, I've lost my place. It's not the end of the world. You can recover. And so to recover, I'll just do that right now. This was one of those pink blossoms that were not completely open. So I'm just kind of making some marks to indicate the way some of these petals are closing in on themselves. And then where they're getting light, I want to get a little bit more intense. A lighter value, but a little bit more intense, not just a pale pink. I can hit it with an even more intense, and that's what's really going to make it feel like it's got sunlight on it. Again, I don't want to spend too much time. I just want to make a few marks and move on. We've got this flower up here. I'll go back in with my yellow. Oops. And we have sunlight hitting this guy over here. Now I'm really shouting. As you can see, I'm pressing a lot harder. Kind of like when you start shouting and you make a mark, you have to be prepared to leave that mark alone, because once you press hard, you're really filling in the tooth of the paper, and you want to be careful that you don't want to put too many layers on top, because then it'll start to get muddy. I was looking and I see that a lot of the yellow flowers have touches of the peach in it, related then that way. I'm not completely finished with this guy here, but I'm going to move on. It's really important when you're working to not dwell on an area. A lot of times we want to just say, okay, I have to feel like this isn't done, but I want to finish it. And then when we do that, we lose track of what's happening elsewhere in the painting. So by moving around in the painting, then we can kind of pull it all together. I'm going to continue on with adding the lighter values to the rest of the flowers, but I don't want to finish these flowers. I don't want to finish the painting today. Remember, the whole idea was we're going to take it to a certain level where we're not sure what to do, and then evaluate it. And I'm getting close to that point. I am having a lot of fun with mark making on this painting. So that's fun. I think I wasn't expecting that this painting was going to have so much variety in mark making, but it does. It's a lot of fun. I'm going to add a little bit of green stuff to my background desert. Here's where I'm talking about that soft edge, where the sky meets that background part. I really want to have it nice and soft. There's also a lot of textures and grasses in the painting. We're going to add those at the end. I see a little peak of light, like a light flower in the distance. I want to just capture that before I move on too far. I'm finding now I'm at the point where I'm starting to see things that I want to make adjustments to, and I don't want to make any adjustments until I have an opportunity to step back. And so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to add a few more of these marks because I think they're fun. I'm also going to see about ordering some more of these tools to see what other kind of marks I can get. I got some, a little bit too much there, a little bit too regular, but I'll just take my sky color and get rid of that. But I'm going to leave it alone right now. This is a very good stopping point because right now my marks are pretty fresh, right? I was able to make some marks, leave them alone. I have to evaluate to see where I want to put clarity and where I want to just let it go. And where do I want to put more detail? Where do I want to put harder edges? Where do I want things to be soft? It may be that I have to take things away. Remember, sometimes it's not what you add, but what you remove. But I really need to think about it and think about my design and the way the viewer is looking at the painting before I can make those finishing marks. So I'm going to stop here. But your job this week is to have fun with adding pastel layers on top of your underpainting. And remember to keep in mind you want to try to create believable depth even when we're close up. And you also want to pay attention to your edges. And now edges are going to be even more important next week when we're making our finishing marks. But I do want you to be mindful of when you press hard, you get a hard edge. Soft, whisper, you get a nice soft edge. So we'll do more next week. Let's go paint.